Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1857B, and today's date is May 2nd, 2019, and the title of the episode is, You're Witnessing the Destruction of the Old Guard. Offensive Begins May 2019. Now, before we get started, I wanted to talk about privacy. Facebook expects to face a massive fine of up to $5 billion from the Federal Trade Commission as a result of an investigation into its privacy policies. Once again, big data fails to protect its consumers' privacy. Why should we keep trusting them? Well, we shouldn't. And one way to fight back is by using a virtual private network. Virtual Shield is my VPN of choice because it's the easiest and fastest VPN to use. Plus, they will never sell or share your data with anyone else. This month, Virtual Shield is offering a Memorial Day special of 30% off all VPN plans. Their no-log policy protects its users from any data breaches. Protect your personal data today by clicking the link below. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, they are in a panic like we've never seen people panic before. And those people that were saying, oh, I don't see Clinton out there, I don't see these people, they don't look like they're panicking, because they truly believed that they were in control. And what we're seeing right now is that how things are changing where they are no longer in control, and they're starting to see the writing on the wall, and they're starting to realize their blocks are gone, the firewall's gone, they can't impeach, they have no ammunition left. So these individuals, they're out there screaming as loud as they possibly can, and we're going to break this down on how and why they are panicking today. But first, I wanted to start off with Nick Salmon. Now, if you recall, Nick Salmon is the high school junior from Covington Catholic High School. He was harassed by this refrigerator repairman, a part-time shaman, Nathan Phillips, after the March for Life. Salmon and his classmates were awaiting their bus and were subjected to a sustained racist verbal attack from the black Hebrew Israelites. Philip and his cronies saw the white kids, some wearing MAGA hats that they purchased from the street vendor, and they decided they could cash in on the conflict. The encounter was filmed and went viral. Salmon was subject to attacks by many major media outlets, as well as being made an object of a 2-minute hate on Twitter and Facebook. Now, Salmon's parents engaged aggressive legal counsel and soon generated some apologies and retractions, but the worst offenders, massive lawsuits, were promised. So Salmon's legal team filed a $250 million suit against the Washington Post. Today, they filed with a $275 million suit against NBC. This is the summary of the lawsuit that Savannah Guthrie's odious interview features heavily in the cause of action. NBC Universal was among the first members of the broadcast online mainstream media to assassinate Nicholas's character and reputation, airing portions of a false, defamatory interview with Phillips on January 19th. NBC Universal also posted its first false and defamatory article about the January 18th incident on January 19th. To the extent the January 18th incident was newsworthy at all, it was not. It was not hot news or breaking news. NBC Universal did not investigate the January 18th incident prior to publishing its false and defamatory accusations, and any efforts it might now claim to be investigative in nature were woefully inadequate and unreasonably deficient when weighed against journalistic standards, particularly standards governing reporting on minors. And you can see that they're pushing through on this. And what they did was they took portions of the video and they left out the most important part, that they weren't doing anything, that they were being harassed by many different groups that were there. Now, we know that Assange was sentenced to 50 weeks in a UK prison because he skipped bail. But now the real battle begins, because they're going to start the U.S. extradition hearings for Assange, and we'll have to see how this all plays out. We are now seeing fear, panic, and the deep state players are screaming very, very loudly, trying to make a case of why Trump and Barr need to go. First, let's start with Paul Sperry's tweet. AG Barr, the evidence is now that the Prez was falsely accused of colluding with the Russians and accused of being treasonous and a Russian agent. And the evidence now is that was without a basis, and 2 years of his admin have been dominated by the allegations that have now been proven false. So we all know that this was never true. And the deep state, they don't want to let this go. Now, we just had the Senate hearing with Bill Barr. Bill Barr decided to cancel the House hearing. Really, there is not a reason for him to attend at this point. They have the report, and the investigation is over. They're just trying to keep this all going. The witch hunt is over, and they do not like the outcome. Joe M. tweeted out, this is at @Storm is Upon Us, an easy way to tell what feet will soon dangle in the damp Cuban twilight. Look for anyone making baseless accusations against the highest ranking enforcer of justice in the land. They are nothing but caged animals throwing their own turds to try to stop what's coming. Now, these individuals, they are screaming at the top of their lungs because they're panicking. This is what the beginning stages of panic looks like. I mean, it's going to get worse. Let's go to Elizabeth Warren and what she tweeted out. AG Barr is a disgrace, and his alarming efforts to suppress the Mueller report show that he's not a credible head of federal law enforcement. He should resign, and based on the actual facts in the Mueller report, Congress should begin impeachment proceedings against the president. Now, Barr, first of all, didn't have to release any of the Mueller report to the public. He did this to be completely transparent. He said he was going to do this during his confirmation hearing. Warren accused Barr of suppressing the Mueller report. Really? Because everyone knows he handed over the 400 plus pages. And he gave a less redacted copy. He produced both. And there were supposed to be 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats that were supposed to read the less redacted. Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 1 was like less than 1% redacted. But guess what? Only 2 or 3 people actually came in. And it was on the Republican side. The Democrats didn't even want to read it. Why? Because they know it says nothing that they need. They always knew this. They use this to push an agenda. And Barr gave it to them. Now they can't even use this anymore. Now, Chairman Jerry Nadler came out swinging shortly after Bill Barr canceled his hearing before the House Judiciary Committee. Nadler said he's lying to blackmail the committee. We cannot permit the administration to dictate the Congress how we operate. Nadler suggested Bill Barr is too terrified to appear in front of the staffers and lawyers they hired to question him in Thursday's hearings. Well, the question is, why did Bill Barr cancel? Well, first of all, he wasn't going to be questioned by representatives. Nadler outsourced the entire thing to experts and staffers. And they were going to try to hammer Barr. And Barr said, you know something? I don't need to do this anymore. The whole thing's over with. There's nothing for me to even answer anymore. House Judiciary Committee members, under the leadership of Chairman Nadler, voted Wednesday morning to have staffers and experts question Attorney General Barr in their committee hearing. And this was a complete nightmare. A lot of people did not agree with this. Barr wasn't having any of it, and he canceled on the House. Now Nadler is throwing a tantrum and threatening Bill Barr with contempt citation. Of course, this was his plan all along. So it doesn't matter what Barr does or what Trump does. I mean, think about it in this way. They were never going to be satisfied no matter what. So they said, we want the full report. You must be transparent. What did Barr do? He gave them the full report, the full 400 plus pages. Yes, there were redactions in there because he had to redact according to the law. They said, well, that's not good enough. We want a report with no redactions. Well, there still had to be some redactions because there are investigations going on, and according to the law, he has to redact the grand jury part of it. So he said, okay, you know what? To be completely transparent, I'm going to go through it once more, and I'm going to remove a lot of the redactions, and now there's less than 1% in there. Now, of course, they want to know what the grand jury stuff is, because that's the part that they're interested in. Are they being investigated? but nobody came to read it. So this was just a game they were playing. Now, Kamala Harris, when she was questioning Bill Barr, she said, "Did you review all the evidence that Mueller looked at?" And Barr said, "No, I don't have to. He gave me the report. That's his job, to go through the evidence, make determination, give me a report, and then we go forward with that." And then Kamala Harris says, "This is unbelievable. He's not doing his job." Now, if Bill Barr said, "Listen, I'm going to be going through this evidence, all of it, thousands and thousands of pages, hundreds of witnesses. It's going to take me another 9 months." They would have said, "He's stonewalling." So it doesn't matter what he does. They're never going to be happy with what he's doing or what Trump is doing. They'll never be satisfied. So right now, we can all agree that the witch hunt is over. And that's what they're continually saying. But the people out there like Adam Schiff, he is out there saying, listen, after that letter that came out, he's saying that, and of course it's all misread, and everyone was out there saying, oh, Mueller meant this and Barr is misreading it. No, they know exactly what it says. They know exactly what was going on. It was leaked out on purpose. And Schiff is saying that Barr should resign. Actually, maybe Schiff should resign because he's in a lot of trouble. Remember, he's a leaker. And they're investigating who? Leakers. Now, they're also trying to get Trump's financial records from Deutsche Bank and Capital One. And it looks like Trump had his attorneys stop this. They're not going to turn over any of the financial records until a federal judge rules if they are able to do this. So Trump has blocked them at that turn. Now, the deep state is not getting what they want. They have no collusion, no obstruction, no crime, but they're investigating Trump for what? We don't even know. But let's continue. We have James Comey out there, and he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, and he said the following: "How could Mr. Barr, a bright and accomplished lawyer, start channeling the president and using words like no collusion and FBI spying, and downplaying acts of obstruction of justice as products of the president being frustrated and angry, something he would never say to justify the thousands of crimes prosecuted every day that are the product of frustration and anger," Comey wrote. How could he write and say things about the report by Robert Mueller, the special counsel, that were apparently so misleading that they prompted written protests from the special counsel himself? How could Mr. Barr go before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday and downplay President Trump's attempt to fire Mr. Mueller before he completed his work? And how could Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, after the release of Mr. Mueller's report that detailed Mr. Trump's determined effort to obstruct justice, give a speech quoting the president on the importance of the rule of law, or on resigning, thank a president who relentlessly attacked both of him and the Department of Justice he led for the courtesy and humor you often display in our personal conversations? Comey tweeted out the following: "Writing this brought me no joy. I am sad for our country." Remember, every time these people tweet out or say something, it's really about them and what they did. If you really read this, he is trying to figure out, and he's trying to tell the American people that the plan didn't go the way it was supposed to go, and he can't figure this out. And he's questioning everything because he knows now everything's going to be turning around. Remember, these individuals, they're saving themselves because they're implicated in other crimes, and they gave them a choice. And Comey and Schiff and Pelosi, they don't know what to do with this. Actually, speaking about Pelosi, she is saying, and she's accusing Bill Barr of misrepresenting facts and withholding the truth from Congress during his Senate testimony. She said, he lied to Congress, that's a crime. That's what she told reporters. Paul Sperry tweeted out, "No, A.G. Barr did not lie or perjure himself, as Pelosi is wigging out about." He was asked by Rep. Christ about a New York Times report quoting anonymous sources, and Christ asked him if he knew what these members of the special counsel's team, not Mueller, were talking about. How would Barr know? Now think about what is happening here. All these people together are saying, let's get Barr, let's get Trump, let's impeach Trump, let's do all this. What is their reasoning? Because the report said no collusion, no obstruction? that they couldn't find anything? I mean, Mueller knows. He knows how to indict. He knows exactly how to press charges. He's done it how many times before? Manafort, Stone, Papadopoulos, and many others. Carter Page. He knows exactly what to do, but he didn't do it because he's fighting for his life right now. And all these people know it. And they know that this was their chance. They were going to use what Mueller was dreaming up to impeach the president. Now they can't do it. Now Biden, he's panicking. Remember, he's running for president. And according to Q, those people that are running for president who think they're safe, they are not. I mean, he has his creepy factor. But more importantly, he has problems with Ukraine and China. And there are current investigations going on into both of these things. And now he's come out and said that China is no threat. He's out there saying there's nothing to worry about with China. They're not a threat. They're not competition. We don't even need to look at China at all. Biden said the following: China can't even figure out how to deal with the fact that they have this great division between the China Sea and the mountains in the east. I mean, in the west, Biden argued. They can't figure out how they are going to deal with the corruption that exists within the system. I mean, you know, they're not bad folks. But guess what? They're not competition for us. Remember what Q continually says. Look over here, Russia. Look over here, Russia. Don't look over here, China. Biden and his son had dealings in China. And he doesn't want anyone looking over at China. But guess what? We're all looking. Now, Hillary Clinton is showing her true colors. She is in full panic mode. She is on the Rachel Maddow show, and she stated that Attorney General William Barr is in contempt of Congress and calling for his resignation makes perfect sense. Hillary said, I think that the committee now faces a question that has to answer. If they find Barr in contempt, which they have every reason to, because he actually is, let that operate on one path, but then go get back to the business of calling witnesses who are mentioned in the Mueller report and begin to tell the public story about what it is that is being described in the Mueller report so that the American people can understand and follow it. She later added, I think that the Democrats on the committee did a good job today in exposing that he is the president's defense lawyer. He is not the Attorney General of the United States in the way that he has conducted himself. Now calling for his resignation makes perfect sense because he's not discharging the duties of the office. He's not going to resign. I think now we need to get into the investigation because let's not let Barr be the big shiny object that diverts people's attention from the two major findings of the Mueller report. I mean, don't look at Barr who is investigating you? Is that what she's saying? And investigating many other people? Well, let me continue because Hillary Clinton said something very, very odd. And when you're listening to this, think mirror, think projection. Now, at one point during the interview, Hillary Clinton hypothetically suggested a scenario where the 2020 Democrat candidate for president called on China to hack into the IRS to get Trump's tax returns. I mean, isn't this the story they told about her email that the Russians hacked in and got her emails when we know it wasn't the Russians? I mean, this is really weird. Take a listen to what she said.
Your show. And that person said, you know, the only other adversary of ours who's anywhere near as good as the Russians is China. So why should Russia have all the fun? And since Russia is clearly backing Republicans, why don't we ask China to back us?
I hereby tonight ask China.
That's right. And not only that, China, if you're listening, why don't you get Trump's tax returns? I'm sure our media would richly reward you. Now, according to the Mueller report, that is not conspiracy because it's done right out in the open. So if after this hypothetical Democratic candidate says this on your show, within hours, all of a sudden the IRS offices are bombarded with incredibly sophisticated cyber tools looking for Trump's tax returns, and then extracts them and then passes them to whatever the new WikiLeaks happens to be, and they start being unraveled and disclosed, nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you're going to let Russia get away with what they did and are still doing, according to Christopher Wray, the current FBI director who said that last week, they're in our election systems. We're worried about 2020, he said. So, hey, let's have a great power contest and let's get the Chinese in on the side of somebody else. Just saying that shows how absurd the situation we find ourselves in.
Now, what she's doing right now, she's really talking about herself. And she's trying to keep the idea alive that Russia hacked into her email system. So they should have China go and hack into the IRS to get Trump's tax returns. And they want China to fix the elections. And we know that none of this happened with Russia. But they're trying to keep the story alive. Paul Sperry tweeted out the following. Breaking. Hillary Clinton tonight on MSNBC called impeachment signals for the House Judiciary Committee, arguing the articles of impeachment for Trump obstruction could right themselves, while citing her own experience as a young lawyer on the Watergate Committee. Sperry continued. Breaking. During an MSNBC interview tonight, Hillary Clinton said she is not worried if Attorney General William Barr reopens investigations of her because there is no there, and there never has been. Now, when Hillary Clinton was out there calling for China to do these things, was she actually talking about her deep state operatives within China to go ahead and hack into the IRS database and to fix the elections and hack into the elections so the elections would be stopped or they would be paused to investigate what happened? It could be, because they are becoming very, very desperate. And you can see how they're panicking right now, because they wouldn't come out of the woodwork to discuss any of this if they were cool, calm, collective, and they had nothing to worry about. They're out there because they realize their block is gone. And Barr, which he mentioned many times, they're looking into the FISA, they're looking into investigations, they're looking into the leaking, they're looking into Clinton's email, they're looking into everything. And they're starting to realize that they lost their blocks. Now remember, within the FBI, within the Department of Justice, all blocks are removed now. Barr is in control, and we have other investigators doing their job. Trump tweeted out the following. Why didn't President Obama do something about Russia in September before November election when told by the FBI? He did nothing and had no intention of doing anything. Yes, it was his responsibility to tell the next president that, yes, Russia is doing something. They're involved. They're hacking. Because aren't the American presidents on the same side? Yes, they might be from different parties, but aren't they doing everything in the best interest of the American people? Well, this is how you know that these people are not doing everything in the best interest of the American people, because he purposely did not tell Trump, and there was a reason for this. So Trump is still asking the same question about Obama. He's continually keeping this out there so everyone realizes what's going on. So let's get into why the deep state and the mainstream media are freaking out. Let's begin. Rosie's Memos tweets out the following. This letter from Boyd scorches at Representative Jerry Nadler, and everyone should read it. Opens with the fact that the Democrats have been offered a chance to review reports that would reveal 98.5% of Volume 1 and 99.9% of Volume 2, which they refused. Rightfully points out at Representative Jerry Nadler 3 out subpoenas before even reading the less redacted report, knowing full well it was against the law for the Justice Department to provide the documents they were screaming about. This subpoena is not legitimate oversight, and what they're doing is a fundamental threat to law enforcement. AG Barr has gone above and beyond with transparency because it was in the public's interest to know that there was no Russian collusion. The committee has basically responded like assholes, and allowing them to reinvestigate and second-guess the Department of Justice sets dangerous precedent. Rightfully points out Mueller had free rein. No one interrupted him. Cites the many cases in the past that have refused Congress access to such sensitive information and reiterates this is not a legitimate use of congressional investigative authority, as they haven't even cited what they're challenging. Losers. You aren't getting shit and you don't deserve shit. My words, not Boyd. Sit down, fatty Nadler. Get some ice. Now, we know there's a lot of talk about this letter that came out from Mueller. And Joe D. explains the letter and why it was produced. Take a listen to Joe D.
Joe.
Well, I would say Willie Brown's paramour can be pretty snitty when she wants to be, just like Bob Mueller's letter is pretty snitty. I think what happened here is, let me just say something about, actually, it's Andrew Weissman's letter to Bill Barr. It's not Mueller's letter. Mueller is stayed too long at the fair. He's not functioning anymore. It's Andrew Weissman who wrote that letter. That letter was a legacy letter. It's designed to cover their tushes because they don't like the reaction to their report, which was a sophomoric, adolescent, 400 pages of very poorly written legal work. It's kind of first-year law school writing, in my opinion. Now, Kamala Harris, she's running for president. She does what she does. She's snitty. She did her little thing. I think, quite frankly, they've embarrassed themselves, and they're embarrassing the United States Senate. And top Kamala Harris with Mazie Hirono, and you really have the Munsters. I mean, it's quite remarkable.
Now, as you can see, Joe D. doesn't even think Mueller wrote this. This was to cover their ass, and he believes Weissman actually wrote this, and they put it out there on purpose. Now, Byron York tweeted out the following. I understand the talk about Mueller not deciding on Trump obstruction, but he did decide, didn't he? If you're investigating for something and you learn that the prosecutor is closing down without taking any action, you're happy, right? Yes, you are. Now, Barr did nothing wrong, and the Wall Street Journal explains this. Mueller's complaint that Barr's summary of the 448 pages report finding lacked context was likely an exercise in ass covering. How could Barr be expected to distill the full sweep and scope of such a lengthy report's finding in just 4 pages? In the same letter, Mueller affirmed that Barr's summary was accurate, and, more tellingly, that he had been moved to write the letter following public confusion about his findings. The political setup of Attorney General William Barr is disreputable even by Beltway standards. Democrats and the media are turning the AG into a villain for doing his duty and making the hard decisions that Special Counsel Robert Mueller abdicated. Mr. Barr told the Senate Wednesday that he offered Mr. Mueller the chance to review his 4-page letter before sending it to Congress, but the special counsel declined. Mr. Mueller worked for Mr. Barr, and that was the proper time to offer suggestions or disagree. Instead, Mr. Mueller ducked that responsibility and then griped in an ex post facto letter that was conveniently leaked on the eve of Mr. Barr's testimony. Quite the stand-up guy, and we all believe that this really came from Weissman, and this was to cover their ass. Mr. Barr has since released the full Mueller report with minor redactions, as he promised, with the context intact. Keep in mind, Mr. Barr was under no legal obligation to release anything at all. Mr. Mueller reports only to Mr. Barr, not to the country or Congress. Mr. Barr also made nearly all of the redactions in the report available to senior members of Congress to inspect at justice. Yet, as this writing, only 3 members have bothered. Senate Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and Ranking House Republican on Judiciary Doug Collins. Not one Democrat howling about Mr. Barr's lack of transparency has examined the outrages they claim are hidden. Mueller was supposed to be their fast track to impeachment. Now they're left trying to gin up an obstruction tale, but the probe wasn't obstructed, and there was no underlying crime. So they're shouting and pounding the table against Bill Barr for acting like a real attorney general. They are trapped by their own doing. And I want to go back in time because we know that Biden and Obama, they continually were out there saying, hey, during Obama's presidency, there were no scandals whatsoever. There was absolutely nothing. But we need to remember something very important, that Obama's campaign's organization paid nearly $1 million to the law firm that funneled money to Fusion GPS to compile a dossier of unverified allegations against Trump. Obama's official campaign organization has directed nearly $1 million to the same law firm that funneled money to Fusion GPS, the firm behind the infamous Steele dossier. That's Obama for America, which paid $972,000 to Perkins Coie. And you can find the records with the Federal Election Commission. This is what they show. Perkins Coie, an international law firm, was directed both by the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign to retain Fusion GPS in April of 2016 to dig up dirt on then-candidate Donald Trump. OFA, Obama's official campaign arm in 2016, paid nearly $800,000 to Perkins Coie in 2016 alone, according to FEC records. So when you see this, you can see they are knee-deep in this. And when they say there's no scandals, oh, believe me, there are plenty of scandals that are going to be coming out. But let's continue. Mark Meadows, he came out and said, listen, I have some criminal referrals against Nellie Ohr, and he has filed them. Nellie Ohr, wife of twice-demoted Department of Justice official Bruce Ohr, was criminally referred to the Justice Department by House Republicans after hundreds of new emails surfaced contradicting her previous statement to Congress. Nellie Ohr previously told Congress that during 2016 election, she worked for Fusion GPS to help them connect Trump and Manafort to Russian organized crime. New Nellie Ohr emails discovered through the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit show evidence to the contrary, via John Solomon. Now 339 pages of emails from her private account to Department of Justice email accounts have been released under the Freedom of Information Act request by the conservative legal group Judicial Watch, and they are raising concerns among Republicans in Congress who filed a criminal referral with the Justice Department on Wednesday night. They clearly show that Ohr sent reams of open source intelligence to her husband, Associate Deputy Attorney General Bruce Ohr, and on some occasions to at least 3 Department of Justice prosecutors, Lisa Holton and Ivana Nisic and Joseph Wheatley. So we see right now that we're getting more and more information and their story is falling apart. Now, Judicial Watch, they filed a Freedom of Information Act request lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice for records of communications and payments between the FBI and former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele and his private firm Orbis Business Intelligence. Judicial Watch filed a lawsuit after the FBI failed to respond to a September 27, 2018 request. And Judicial Watch wants all records, communications between any official, employee, or representative of the FBI and Mr. Christopher Steele, a former British intelligence officer and the owner of the private firm Orbis Business Intelligence. So Judicial Watch wants all these records. And guess what? They're going to get them. And you can see more and more this information is starting to flow. And why? The blocks are gone. They will be getting all this information. Now, the investigation are now proceeding forward with Biden, and Kenneth Vogel tweeted out the following. New, the Bidens are entangled in a Ukrainian corruption scandal. Joe Biden pushed Ukraine to fire a prosecutor seen as corrupt, but the prosecutor had opened a case into a company that was paying Hunter Biden. The Bidens say they never discussed it. Now, New York Times, they're trying to get ahead of all these stories because they know it's coming out. And they created this story about the Ukrainians and how Obama came in, threatened to withhold funds to the Ukrainian government until they fired that prosecutor who was investigating the Bidens, and they finally did. And you can see the mainstream media, they're trying to get ahead of all of this. But guess what? It's too late. The storm is upon us. And the team just got a new member. U.S. Attorney Utah tweeted out the following. Honored to have former AUSA and office leader David J. Schwendeman in the office today for a Brown Bag Office alumni visit. Great advice for us, shaped by his experience as an AUSA, a war crimes prosecutor, his work on 3 Olympics, and at the Justice Department's attaché in Kabul. Now that's very interesting. A war crime prosecutor. And Huber is meeting with him. Now, Senator Grassley sums it all up Take a listen to what he said. Josh Steele, PhD, tweeted this out.
The last time he was here, they said, has Bob Mueller expressed any concerns to you? And he said, no, and I don't know if there are any concerns. He had had a letter, he had had a phone call. Yeah. The letter clearly says there are concerns. So
he had that conversation, and you heard him say, and I have to assume that Mueller said it to him, that he was only concerned about how the media played it. So I think here's where we are. The Democrats and you folks in the media are not concerned about the report. I think you're concerned about the results weren't what you expected. And I think we're finding out that everybody was sold a bunch of snake oil, and now the jig's up.
And I think he deserves a boom because, whoa, he just came out and just said it. Now, during a round of questioning with Senator Tom Tillis, Barr was asked about the scale and scope of the current IG investigation. Take a listen to the discussion they had and where this is all going with the Pfizer review.
Question for you. The scope of the OIG. Do you understand or do you know what the scope of that report will be? Will it be purely on this investigation, or would it extend to all other acts that may have in some way influenced this investigation?
Well, I don't want to be too specific. I talked to Mike Horowitz a few weeks ago about it, and it's focused on the FISA, the basis for the FISA and the handling of the FISA applications. But by necessity, it looks back a little bit earlier than that. The people I have helping me with my review will be working very closely with Mr. Horowitz.
Now, I want to go back again because we have other people talking. I'm sure it's going to come up again. I'm clear in this report there was no underlying crime. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's
the conclusion of the report.
And there was insufficient evidence or insufficient evidence to assert that the president obstructed justice. And a lot of that evidence was in the public eye because we've talked about tweets and public statements and a number of other things that we're trying to use to assert as evidence for obstruction of justice. It seems odd to me that people on this committee that pound and pound over and over again that you're innocent until proven guilty, with the extent of this report, with the number of resources, nearly $30 million, when the facts don't lead to the outcome that you wanted, the one that the marketing department wanted, to use this as a political tool for the next 20 months. It seems odd to me that we'd go down the path of saying that, well, in spite of all the work, we're going to indict them anyway, and if we can't indict them, then we're going to impugn your integrity and call you a liar. I find that behavior on this committee despicable. Thank you.
Senator Harris.
And this is what all these deep state players are worried about, because they know these investigations are going on. They know the clock is ticking down, and there's nothing they can do about it. Everything that they've tried to do has failed. They're running out of ammunition. Now, a former Central Intelligence Agency case officer pleaded guilty today to conspiring to communicate, deliver, and transmit national defense information to the People's Republic of China. By the way, this is the third case in less than a year in which a former U.S. intelligence officer has pled or been found guilty of conspiring with the Chinese intelligence. That's right. We shouldn't be looking at China. Nothing to see here. And I believe there's going to be many, many more of these individuals. Now, Q dropped some more bread. It's actually one post. Maybe Q will post some more later on today, but this is the post. 3331 gives us a YouTube link. And this is The Karate Kid. And this is the original movie with Ralph Macchio. And Q is saying, you are witnessing the systematic destruction of the old guard. And when you watch this video clip, it shows Daniel, who is Ralph Macchio, looking in at Cobra Kai. And that is the old guard. And the new guard is about to take over. Q says, May 2019, kickoff, start, offense. Enjoy the show. So Q is telling us that the offensive is going to begin in this month. We know that the Comey report's coming out. We know the D-Class is coming out. We know the OIG is coming out. Now, once again, Q has done this before, where Q has told us that May is going to be the date to get the deep state to do something and then have it come out a week or two later. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But if we go back to the Karate Kid, I think there's a message in what Q is trying to tell us. Mr. Miyagi, he trained Daniel because Daniel wanted to know karate to beat those kids that were bullying him in Cobra Kai. And he asked Mr. Miyagi, "Can you teach me?" And Mr. Miyagi said, "Yes, but you have to listen and do exactly what I say." And he thought he was going to go in there, and this is his expectations, he thought he was going to go in there and learn what the class was learning. But Mr. Miyagi had different plans. And guess what? Daniel didn't know the plan. So he gave him sandpaper and said, "Start sanding the house. And I want you to do it very specifically. Your right hand sand this way, your left hand sand this way." Then he said, "Listen, now I want you to paint the house, and I want you to use brush strokes like this, up and down, and then do the left hand the same exact way." Then he had him wash the car, wax on, wax off. I know many people have heard this before, and if you haven't, watch the movie. So again, with his hands, he's waxing in a certain motion with the right hand and the left hand. Now, this entire time, Daniel's saying, "I thought he was going to teach me how to fight or defend myself. He's taught me absolutely nothing. You know what I've been doing? I've been painting his house, I've been waxing the car, and I know nothing." You know why? Because he didn't understand the plan. He didn't understand the path that was being taken to get him where he needed to be. And then he confronts Miyagi and says, "Listen, you've taught me nothing. I don't know how to fight. I don't know how to defend myself. What am I going to do?" Mr. Miyagi says, "Really? Well, let's see." He threw a kick, he threw a punch, and guess what? He was able to block it all. He didn't know the plan. He trusted the plan in some ways until the very end. But Mr. Miyagi took a path completely different than what Daniel expected. Cue the Patriots, Trump. They're taking us on this path. And we thought it was supposed to go this way. But there was a reason why they had to bring us in the direction we went in to get to this point. And I believe this is the message. And if you look back in time, you can see the plan. Moving forward, you can't see it. You don't know what the plan is, but looking back now, you can see why it had to happen this way and why they did it. There were specific reasons. Guess what? The Patriots are on the offensive. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.